Section 36 of The Natural History, Volume 4. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Anna Simon. The Natural History, Volume 4 by PLINY the Elder. Translated by John Bostock and Henry Thomas Riley. Section 36. Book 20, Chapters 46 to 55. Chapter 46. Olusatrum or Hipposelenon, 11 remedies. Orioselenon, 2 remedies. Helioselenon, 1 remedy. Olusatrum, usually known as Hipposelenon, is particularly repulsive to scorpions. The seed of it, taken in drink, is a cure for gripings in the stomach and intestinal complaints, and a decoction of the seed, drunk in honeyed wine, is curative in cases of dysuria. The root of the plant, boiled in wine, expels calculi of the bladder, and is a cure for lumbago and pains in the sides. Taken in drink and applied topically, it is a cure for the bite of a mad dog, and the juice of it, when drunk, is warming for persons benumbed with cold. Some persons make out Orioselenon to be a 4th species of parsley. It is a shrub about a palm in height, with an elongated seed, bearing a strong resemblance to that of cummin, and efficacious for the urine and the catamenia. Helioselenon is possessed of peculiar virtues against the bites of spiders, and Orioselenon is used with wine for promoting the menstrual discharge. Chapter 47. Petroselenon, 1 remedy. Buselenon, 1 remedy. Another kind again, which grows in rocky places, is known by some persons as petroselenon. It is particularly good for abscesses, taken in doses of 2 spoonfuls of the juice to 1 cayetes of juice of horehound, mixed with 3 cayeti of warm water. Some writers have added buselenon to the list, which differs only from the cultivated kind in the shortness of the stalk and the red color of the root, the medicinal properties being just the same. Taken in drink or applied topically, it is an excellent remedy for the stings of serpents. Chapter 48. Ocimum, 35 remedies. Chrysippus has exclaimed as strongly too against ocimum as he has against parsley, declaring that it is prejudicial to the stomach and the free discharge of the urine, and is injurious to the sight; that it produces insanity too, and lethargy, as well as diseases of the liver; and that it is for this reason that goats refuse to touch it. Hence he comes to the conclusion that the use of it ought to be avoided by man. Some persons go so far as to say that if beaten up and then placed beneath a stone, a scorpion will breed there, and that if chewed and then placed in the sun, worms will breed in it. The people of Africa maintain too that if a person is stung by a scorpion the same day on which he has eaten ocimum, his life cannot possibly be saved. Even more than this, there are some who assert that if a handful of ocimum is beaten up with 10 sea or river crabs, all the scorpions in the vicinity will be attracted to it. Deodotus, too, in his book of recipes, says that ocimum, used as an article of food, breeds lice. Succeeding ages, again, have warmly defended this plant. It has been maintained, for instance, that goats do eat it, that the mind of no one who has eaten of it is at all affected, and that mixed with wine, with the addition of a little vinegar, it is a cure for the stings of land scorpions and the venom of those found in the sea. Experience has proved, too, that the smell of this plant in vinegar is good for fainting fits and lethargy, as well as inflammations; that employed as a cooling liniment, with rose oil, myrtle oil, or vinegar, it is good for headache; and that applied topically with wine, it is beneficial for defluxions of the eyes. It has been found also that it is good for the stomach; that taken with vinegar, it dispels flatulent eructations; that applications of it arrest fluxes of the bowels; that it acts as a diuretic; and that in this way it is good for jaundice and dropsy, as well as cholera and looseness of the bowels. Hence it is that Felistio has prescribed it even for celiac affections, and boiled for dysentery. Some persons too, though contrary to the opinion of Plistonicus, have given it in wine for tenesmus and spitting of blood, as also for obstructions of the viscera. It is employed too as a liniment for the mammillae, and has the effect of arresting the secretion of the milk. It is very good also for the ears of infants, when applied with goose grease more particularly. The seed of it, beaten up and inhaled into the nostrils, is provocative of sneezing, and applied as a liniment to the head, of running at the nostrils. Taken in the food too with vinegar, it purges the uterus. Mixed with copperas, it removes warts. It acts also as an aphrodisiac, for which reason it is given to horses and asses at the season for covering. Wild ocimum has exactly the same properties in every respect, though in a more active degree. It is particularly good too for the various affections produced by excessive vomiting, and for abscesses of the womb. The root, mixed with wine, is extremely efficacious for bites inflicted by wild beasts. Chapter 49. Rocket, 12 remedies. The seed of rocket is remedial for the venom of the scorpion and the shrew mouse. It repels too all parasitical insects which breed on the human body, and applied to the face as liniment with honey removes spots upon the skin. Used with vinegar too, it is a cure for freckles, and mixed with ox gall, it restores the livid marks left by wounds to their natural color. It is said that if this plant is taken in wine by persons who are about to undergo a flogging, it will impart a certain degree of insensibility to the body. So agreeable is its flavor as a savoring for food that the Greeks have given it the name of oecomon. It is generally thought that rocket lightly bruised and employed as a fomentation for the eyes will restore the sight to its original goodness, and that it allays coughs in young infants. The root of it, boiled in water, has the property of extracting the splinters of broken bones. As to the properties of rocket as an aphrodisiac, we have mentioned them already. 3 leaves of wild rocket plucked with the left hand, beaten up in hydromel, and then taken in drink, are productive of a similar effect. Chapter 50. Nasturtium, 42 remedies. Nasturtium, on the other hand, is an anti-aphrodisiac. It has the effect also of sharpening the senses, as already stated. There are 2 varieties of this plant. One of them is purgative, and taken in doses of 1 denarius to 7 of water, carries off the bilious secretions. Applied as a liniment to scrofulous sores with bean meal, and then covered with a cabbage leaf, it is a most excellent remedy. The other kind, which is darker than the first, has the effect of carrying off vicious humours of the head, and sharpening the sight. Taken in vinegar, it calms the troubled spirits, and, drunk with wine or taken in a fig, it is good for affections of the spleen. Taken in honey too, fasting daily, it is good for a cough. The seed of it, taken in wine, expels all kinds of intestinal worms, and with the addition of wild mint, it acts more efficaciously still. It is good too for asthma and cough, in combination with wild marjoram and sweet wine, and a decoction of it in goat's milk is used for pains in the chest. Mixed with pitch, it disperses tumors and extracts thorns from the body, and employed as a liniment with vinegar, it removes spots upon the body. When used for the cure of carcinoma, white of eggs is added to it. With vinegar it is employed also as a liniment for affections of the spleen, and with honey it is found to be very useful for the complaints of infants. Sextius adds that the smell of burnt nasturtium drives away serpents, neutralizes the venom of scorpions, and gives relief in headache. With the addition too of mustard, he says, it is a cure for alopecia, and applied to the ears with a fig, it is a remedy for hardness of hearing. The juice of it, he says, if injected into the ears, will effect the cure of toothache, and employed with goose grease, it is a remedy for porigo and ulcerous sores of the head. Applied with leaven, it brings boils to a head, and makes carbuncles suppurate and break. Used with honey, too, it is good for cleansing phagedenic ulcers. Topical applications are made of it, combined with vinegar and polenta, in cases of sciatica and lumbago. It is similarly employed, too, for lichens and malformed nails, its qualities being naturally caustic. The best nasturtium of all is that of Babylonia. The wild variety possesses the same qualities as the cultivated in every respect, but in a more powerful degree. Chapter 51. Rue, 84 remedies. One of the most active, however, of all the medicinal plants is rue. The cultivated kind has broader leaves and more numerous branches than the other. Wild rue is more violent in its effects and more active in every respect. The juice of it is extracted by beating it up and moistening it moderately with water, after which it is kept for use in boxes of Cyprian copper. Given in large doses, this juice has all the baneful effects of poison, and that of Macedonia more particularly, which grows on the banks of the river Aleakmon. It is a truly wonderful thing, but the juice of hemlock has the property of neutralizing its effects. Thus do we find one thing acting as the poison of another poison, for the juice of hemlock is very beneficial rubbed upon the hands and face of persons employed in gathering rue. In other respects, rue is one of the principal ingredients employed in antidotes, that of Galatia more particularly. Every species of rue, employed by itself, has the effect also of an antidote, if the leaves are bruised and taken in wine. It is good more particularly in cases of poisoning by wolfsbane and mistletoe, as well as by fungi, whether administered in the drink or the food. Employed in a similar manner, it is good for the stings of serpents. So much so, in fact, that weasels, when about to attack them, take the precaution first of protecting themselves by eating rue. Rue is good, too, for the injuries by scorpions and spiders, the stings of bees, hornets, and wasps, the noxious effects produced by cantharides and salamanders, and the bites of mad dogs. The juice is taken in doses of 1 acetabulum in wine, and the leaves, beaten up or else chewed, are applied topically, with honey and salt, or boiled with vinegar and pitch. It is said that people rubbed with the juice of rue, or even having it on their person, are never attacked by these noxious creatures, and that serpents are driven away by the stench of burning rue. The most efficacious, however, of all is the root of wild rue, taken with wine. This, too, it is said, is more beneficial still if drunk in the open air. Pythagoras has distinguished this plant also into male and female, the former having smaller leaves than the other, and of a grass-green color. The female plant, he says, has leaves of a larger size and a more vivid hue. The same author, too, has considered rue to be injurious to the eyes, but this is an error, for engravers and painters are in the habit of eating it with bread, or else nasturtium, for the benefit of the sight. Wild goats, too, eat it for the sight, they say. Many persons have dispersed films on the eyes by rubbing them with a mixture of the juice of rue with Attic honey, or the milk of a woman just delivered of a male child. The same result has been produced also by touching the corners of the eyes with the pure juice of the plant. Applied topically with polenta, rue carries off defluxions of the eyes, and, taken with wine or applied topically with vinegar and rose oil, it is a cure for headache. If, however, the pain attacks the whole of the head, the rue should be applied with barley meal and vinegar. This plant has the effect also of dispelling crudities, flatulency, and inveterate pains of the stomach. It opens the uterus too, and restores it when displaced, for which purpose it is applied as a liniment with honey to the whole of the abdomen and chest. Mixed with figs and boiled down to 1/2, it is administered in wine for dropsy, and it is taken in a similar manner for pains of the chest, sides, and loins, as well as for coughs, asthma, and affections of the lungs, liver, and kidneys, and for shivering fits. Persons about to indulge in wine take a decoction of the leaves to prevent headache and surfeit. Taken in food, too, it is wholesome, whether eaten raw or boiled, or used as a confection. Boiled with hyssop, and taken with wine, it is good for gripings of the stomach. Employed in the same way, it arrests internal hemorrhage, and, applied to the nostrils, bleeding at the nose. It is beneficial also to the teeth if rinsed with it. In cases of earache, this juice is injected into the ears, care being taken to moderate the dose, as already stated, if wild rue is employed. For hardness of hearing, too, and singing in the ears, it is similarly employed in combination with oil of roses, or oil of laurel, or else cummin and honey. Juice of rue pounded in vinegar is applied also to the temples and the region of the brain in persons affected with phrenitis. Some persons, however, have added to this mixture wild thyme and laurel leaves, rubbing the head and neck as well with the liniment. It has been given in vinegar to lethargic patients to smell at, and a decoction of it is administered for epilepsy in doses of 4 cariatide, as also just before the attacks in fever of intolerable chills. It is likewise given raw to persons for shivering fits. Rue is a provocative of the urine, to bleeding even. It promotes the menstrual discharge also, and brings away the afterbirth, as well as the dead fetus even, according to Hippocrates, if taken in sweet red wine. The same author also recommends applications of it, as well as fumigations, for affections of the uterus. For cardiac disease, Diocles prescribes applications of rue in combination with vinegar, honey, and barley meal. And for the iliac passion, he says that it should be mixed with meal, boiled in oil, and spread upon the wool of a sheep's fleece. Many persons recommend for purulent expectorations 2 drachmae of dried rue to 1½ of sulphur, and for spitting of blood a decoction of 3 sprigs in wine. It is given also in dysentery with cheese, the rue being first beaten up in wine, and it has been prescribed, pounded with bitumen, as a potion for habitual shortness of breath. For persons suffering from violent falls, 3 ounces of the seed is recommended. A pound of oil, in which rue leaves have been boiled, added to 1 sextarius of wine, forms a liniment for parts of the body which are frostbitten. If rue really is a diuretic, as Hippocrates thinks, it is a singular thing that some persons should give it as being an antidiuretic, for the suppression of incontinence of urine. Applied topically, with honey and alum, it cures itch scabs and leprous sores, and, in combination with nightshade and hog's lard or beef suet, it is good for morphew, warts, scrofula, and maladies of a similar nature. Used with vinegar and oil, or else white lead, it is good for erysipelas, and, applied with vinegar, for carbuncles. Some persons prescribe silphium also as an ingredient in the liniment, but it is not employed by them for the cure of the pustules known as epinictis. Boiled rue is recommended also as a cataplasm for swellings of the mammillae, and combined with wax for eruptions of pituitous matter. It is applied with tender sprigs of laurel in cases of defluxion of the testes, and it exercises so peculiar an effect upon those organs that old rue, it is said, employed in a liniment with axle grease, is a cure for hernia. The seed pounded and applied with wax is remedial also for broken limbs. The root of this plant, applied topically, is a cure for effusion of blood in the eyes, and, employed as a liniment, it removes scars or spots on all parts of the body. Among the other properties which are attributed to rue, it is a singular fact that, though it is universally agreed that it is hot by nature, a bunch of it, boiled in rose oil, with the addition of an ounce of aloes, has the effect of checking the perspiration in those who rub themselves with it, and that, used as an aliment, it impedes the generative functions. Hence it is that it is so often given in cases of spermatorrhea, and where persons are subject to lascivious dreams. Every precaution should be taken by pregnant women to abstain from rue as an article of diet, for I find it stated that it is productive of fatal results to the fetus. Of all the plants that are grown, rue is the one that is most generally employed for the maladies of cattle, whether arising from difficulty of respiration or from the stings of noxious creatures, in which cases it is injected with wine into the nostrils, or whether they may happen to have swallowed a horseleech, under which circumstances it is administered in vinegar. In all other maladies of cattle, the rue is prepared just as for man in a similar case. Chapter 52. Wild Mint, 20 Remedies. Mentastrum, or wild mint, differs from the other kind in the appearance of the leaves, which have the form of those of ocimum and the color of pennyroyal, for which reason some persons, in fact, give it the name of wild pennyroyal. The leaves of this plant, chewed and applied topically, are a cure for elephantiasis, a discovery which was accidentally made in the time of Pompeius Magnus by a person affected with this malady, covering his face with the leaves for the purpose of neutralizing the bad smell that arose therefrom. These leaves are employed also as a liniment, and in drink, with a mixture of salt, oil, and vinegar, for the stings of scorpions, and in doses of 2 drachmae to 2 caethi of wine, for those of scolopendri and serpents. A decoction, too, of the juice is given for the sting of the scolopendra. Leaves of wild mint are kept, dried, and reduced to a fine powder, as a remedy for poisons of every description. Spread on the ground, or burned, this plant has the effect of driving away scorpions. Taken in drink, wild mint carries off the lochia in females after parturition, but if taken before, it is fatal to the fetus. It is extremely efficacious in cases of rupture and convulsions, and, though in a somewhat less degree, for orthopnea, gripings of the bowels, and cholera. It is good, too, as a topical application for lumbago and gout. The juice of it is injected into the ears for worms breeding there. It is taken also for jaundice, and is employed in liniments for scrofulous sores. It prevents the recurrence of lascivious dreams, and taken in vinegar it expels tapeworm. For the cure of porigo it is put in vinegar, and the head is washed with the mixture in the sun. Chapter 53. Mint. 41 Remedies. The very smell of mint reanimates the spirits, and its flavor gives a remarkable zest to food. Hence it is that it is so generally an ingredient in our sauces. It has the effect of preventing milk from turning sour, or curdling and thickening. Hence it is that it is so generally put into milk used for drinking, to prevent any danger of persons being choked by it in a curdled state. It is administered also for this purpose in water or honeyed wine. It is generally thought too that it is in consequence of this property that it impedes generation, by preventing the seminal fluids from obtaining the requisite consistency. In males as well as females it arrests bleeding, and it has the property, with the latter, of suspending the menstrual discharge. Taken in water, with amylum, it prevents looseness in celiac complaints. Cereation employed this plant for the cure of abscesses of the uterus, and, in doses of 3 oboli with honeyed wine, for diseases of the liver. He prescribed it also in pottage for spitting of blood. It is an admirable remedy for ulcerations of the head in children, and has the effect equally of drying the trachea when too moist, and of bracing it when too dry. Taken in honeyed wine and water, it carries off purulent phlegm. The juice of mint is good for the voice when a person is about to engage in a contest of eloquence, but only when taken just before. It is employed also with milk as a gargle for swelling of the uvula, with the addition of rue and coriander. With alum too it is good for the tonsils of the throat, and mixed with honey for roughness of the tongue. Employed by itself, it is a remedy for internal convulsions and affections of the lungs. Taken with pomegranate juice, as Democritus tells us, it arrests hiccup and vomiting. The juice of mint, fresh gathered, inhaled, is a remedy for affections of the nostrils. Beaten up and taken in vinegar, mint is a cure for cholera, and for internal fluxes of blood. Applied externally, with polenta, it is remedial for the iliac passion and tension of the mammillae. It is applied too as a liniment to the temples for headache, and it is taken internally as an antidote for the stings of scolopendri, sea scorpions, and serpents. As a liniment it is applied also for defluxions of the eyes, and all eruptions of the head, as well as maladies of the rectum. Mint is an effectual preventive, too, of chafing of the skin, even if held in the hand only. In combination with honeyed wine, it is employed as an injection for the ears. It is said, too, that this plant will cure affections of the spleen, if tasted in the garden 9 days consecutively, without plucking it, the person who bites it saying at the same moment that he does so for the benefit of the spleen, and that, if dried and reduced to powder, a pinch of it with 3 fingers taken in water will cure stomach ache. Sprinkled in this form in drink, it is said to have the effect of expelling intestinal worms. Chapter 54. Pennyroyal. 25 Remedies. Pennyroyal partakes with mint, in a very considerable degree, the property of restoring consciousness in fainting fits, slips of both plants being kept for the purpose in glass bottles filled with vinegar. It is for this reason that Varro has declared that a wreath of pennyroyal is more worthy to grace our chambers than a chaplet of roses. Indeed, it is said that, placed upon the head, it materially alleviates headache. It is generally stated, too, that the smell of it alone will protect the head against the injurious effects of cold or heat, and that it acts as a preventive of thirst. Also, that persons exposed to the sun, if they carry a couple of sprigs of pennyroyal behind the ears, will never be incommoded by the heat. For various pains, too, it is employed topically, mixed with polenta and vinegar. The female plant is the more efficacious of the two. It has a purple flower, that of the male being white. Taken in cold water with salt and polenta, it arrests nausea, as well as pains of the chest and abdomen. Taken too in water, it prevents gnawing pains of the stomach, and with vinegar and polenta it arrests vomiting. In combination with salt and vinegar and polenta it loosens the bowels. Taken with boiled honey and nitre, it is a cure for intestinal complaints. Employed with wine, it is a diuretic, and if the wine is the produce of the Armenian grape, it has the additional effect of dispersing calculi of the bladder and removing all internal pains. Taken in conjunction with honey and vinegar, it modifies the menstrual discharge, and brings away the afterbirth, restores the uterus, when displaced, to its natural position, and expels the dead fetus. The seed is given to persons to smell at who have been suddenly struck dumb, and is prescribed for epileptic patients in doses of 1 caetes, taken in vinegar. If water is found unwholesome for drinking, bruised pennyroyal should be sprinkled in it. Taken with wine, it modifies acridities of the body. Mixed with salt, it is employed as a friction for the sinews, and with honey and vinegar in cases of opisthotomy. Decoctions of it are prescribed as a drink for persons stung by serpents, and beaten up in wine, it is employed for the stings of scorpions, that which grows in a dry soil in particular. This plant is looked upon as efficacious also for ulcerations of the mouth, and for coughs. The blossom of it, fresh gathered and burnt, kills fleas by its smell. Xenocrates, among the other remedies which he mentions, says that in tertian fevers a sprig of pennyroyal wrapped in wool should be given to the patient to smell at just before the fit comes on, or else it should be put under the bedclothes and laid by the patient's side. Chapter 55. Wild pennyroyal. 17 remedies. For all the purposes already mentioned, wild pennyroyal has exactly the same properties, but in a still higher degree. It bears a strong resemblance to wild marjoram, and has a smaller leaf than the cultivated kind. By some persons it is known as dictymnos. When browsed upon by sheep and goats, it makes them bleat, for which reason some of the Greeks, changing a single letter in its name, have called it blechon instead of glechon. This plant is naturally so heating as to blister the parts of the body to which it is applied. For a cough which results from a chill, it is a good plan for the patient to rub himself with it before taking the bath. It is similarly employed, too, in shivering fits, just before the attacks come on, and for convulsions and gripings of the stomach. It is also remarkably good for the gout. To persons afflicted with spasms, this plant is administered in drink, in combination with honey and salt, and it renders expectoration easy in affections of the lungs. Taken with salt, it is beneficial for the spleen and bladder, and is curative of asthma and flatulency. A decoction of it is equally as good as a juice. It restores the uterus when displaced, and is prescribed for the sting of either the land or the sea scolopendra, as well as the scorpion. It is particularly good, too, for bites inflicted by a human being. The root of it, newly taken up, is extremely efficacious for corroding ulcers, and in a dried state tends to efface the deformities produced by scars. End of section 36.
Section 37 of The Natural History, Volume 4. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Read for you by Chiquito Crasto. The Natural History, Volume 4, by Pliny the Elder. Translated by John Bostock and Henry Thomas Riley. Section 37. Chapter 56. Nep has also some affinity in its effects with pennyroyal. Boiled down in water to 1/3, these plants dispel sudden chills. They promote the menstrual discharge also in females, and allay excessive heats in summer. Nep possesses certain virtues against the stings of serpents. At the very smoke and smell of it, they will instantly take to flight, and persons who have to sleep in places where they are apprehensive of them will do well to place it beneath them. Bruised, it is employed topically for lachrymal fistulas of the eye. Fresh gathered and mixed in vinegar, with 1/3 part of bread, it is applied as a liniment for headache. The juice of it, injected into the nostrils, with the head thrown back, arrests bleeding at the nose, and the root has a similar effect. This last is employed also with myrtle seed in warm raisin wine as a gargle for the cure of quinsy. Chapter 57. Cummin. 48 remedies. Wild cummin, 26 remedies. Wild cummin is a remarkably slender plant, consisting of 4 or 5 leaves indented like a saw. Like the cultivated kind, it is much employed in medicine, among the stomachic remedies more particularly. Bruised and taken with bread, or else drunk in wine and water, it dispels phlegm and flatulency, as well as gripings of the bowels and pains in the intestines. Both varieties have the effect, however, of producing paleness in those who drink these mixtures. At all events, it is generally stated that the disciples of Porcius Latro, so celebrated among the professors of eloquence, used to employ this drink for the purpose of imitating the paleness which had been contracted by their master through the intensity of his studies; and that Julius Vindex, in more recent times, that assertor of our liberties against Nero, adopted this method of playing upon those who were looking out for a place in his will. Applied in the form of lozenges, or fresh with vinegar, cummin has the effect of arresting bleeding at the nose, and used by itself, it is good for defluxions of the eyes. Combined with honey, it is used also for swellings of the eyes. With children of tender age, it is sufficient to apply it to the abdomen. In cases of jaundice, it is administered in white wine immediately after taking the bath. The cummin of Ethiopia, more particularly, is given in vinegar and water, or else as an electuary with honey. It is thought, too, that the cummin of Africa has the peculiar property of arresting incontinence of urine. The cultivated plant is given, parched and beaten up in vinegar, for affections of the liver, as also for vertigo. Beaten up in sweet wine, it is taken in cases also where the urine is too acrid, and for affections of the uterus it is administered in wine, the leaves of it being employed topically as well, in layers of wool. Parched and beaten up with honey, it is used as an application for swellings of the testes, or else with rose oil and wax. For all the purposes above mentioned, wild cummin is more efficacious than cultivated, as also in combination with oil for the stings of serpents, scorpions, and scolopendri. A pinch of it with 3 fingers taken in wine has the effect of arresting vomiting and nausea. It is used, too, both as a drink and a liniment for the colic, or else it is applied hot in dorsals of lint to the part affected, bandages being employed to keep it in its place. Taken in wine, it dispels hysterical affections, the proportions being 3 drachmae of cummin to 3 chiathi of wine. It is used as an injection, too, for the ears, when affected with tingling and singing, being mixed for the purpose with veal, suet, or honey. For contusions, it is applied as a liniment with honey, raisins, and vinegar, and for dark freckles on the skin with vinegar. Chapter 58. Ammi. 10 remedies. There is another plant which bears a very strong resemblance to cummin, known to the Greeks as ammi. Some persons are of opinion that it is the same as the Ethiopian cummin. Hippocrates gives it the epithet of royal, no doubt because he looks upon it as possessed of great virtues than Egyptian cummin. Many persons, however, consider it to be of a totally different nature from cummin, as it is so very much thinner and of a much whiter colour. Still it is employed for just the same purposes as cummin, for we find it used at Alexandria for putting under leaves of bread and forming an ingredient in various sauces. It has the effect of dispelling flatulency and gripings of the bowels, and of promoting the secretion of the urine and the menstrual discharge. It is employed also for the cure of bruises and to assuage defluxions of the eyes. Taken in wine with linseed in doses of 2 drachmae, it is a cure for the stings of scorpions, and used with an equal proportion of myrrh, it is particularly good for the bite of the cerastes. Like cummin, too, it imparts paleness of complexion to those who drink of it. Used as a fumigation with raisins or with resin, it acts as a purgative upon the uterus. It is said, too, that if a woman smell at this plant during the sexual congress, the chances of conception will be greatly promoted thereby. Chapter 59. The Capparis or Caper, 18 Remedies. We have already spoken of the caper at sufficient length when treating of the exotic plants. The caper which comes from beyond sea should never be used. That of Italy is not so dangerous. It is said that persons who eat this plant daily are never attacked by paralysis or pains in the spleen. The root of it, pounded, removes white eruptions of the skin if rubbed with it in the sun. The bark of the root taken in wine in doses of 3 drachmae is good for affections of the spleen. The patient, however, must forego the use of the bath. It is said, too, that in the course of 35 days the whole of the spleen may be discharged under this treatment by urine and by stool. The caper is also taken in drink for lumbago and paralysis, and the seed of it boiled and beaten up in vinegar, or the root chewed, has a soothing effect in toothache. A decoction of it in oil is employed also as an injection for earache. The leaves and the root, fresh out of the ground, mixed with honey, are a cure for ulcers known as phagedænie. In the same way, too, the root disperses scrofulous swellings, and a decoction of it in water removes imposthumes of the parotid glands and worms. Beaten up and mixed with barley meal, it is applied topically for pains in the liver. It is a cure also for diseases of the bladder. In combination with oxymel, it is prescribed for tapeworm, and a decoction of it in vinegar removes ulcerations of the mouth. It is generally agreed among writers that the caper is prejudicial to the stomach. Chapter 60. Ligusticum or lovage, 4 Remedies. Ligusticum, by some persons known as panax, is good for the stomach, and is curative of convulsions and flatulency. There are persons who give this plant the name of cunila bubula, but as we have already stated, they are in error in so doing. Chapter 61. Cunila bubula, 5 Remedies. In addition to garden cunila, there are numerous other varieties of it employed in medicine. That known to us as cunila bubula has a very similar seed to that of pennyroyal. This seed, chewed and applied topically, is good for wounds. The plaster, however, must not be taken off till the 5th day. For the stings of serpents, this plant is taken in wine, and the leaves of it are bruised and applied to the wound, which is also rubbed with them as a friction. The tortoise, when about to engage in combat with the serpent, employs this plant as a preservative against the effect of its sting. Some persons, for this reason, have given it the name of panacea. It has the effect also of dispersing tumours and maladies of the male organs, the leaves being dried for the purpose, or else beaten up fresh and applied to the part affected. For every purpose for which it is employed, it combines remarkably well with wine. Chapter 62. Cunila gallinaceae or origanum, 5 Remedies. There is another variety, again known to our people as cunila gallinacea, and to the Greeks as Heracleotic origanum. Beaten up with salt, this plant is good for the eyes, and it is a remedy for cough and affections of the liver. Mixed with meal and taken as a broth with oil and vinegar, it is good for pains in the side and the stings of serpents in particular. Chapter 63. Cunilago, 8 remedies. There is a third specimen, also known to the Greeks as male cunila, and to us as cunilago. This plant has a fetid smell, a ligneous root, and a rough leaf. Of all the varieties of cunila, this one, it is said, is possessed of the most active properties. If a handful of it is thrown anywhere, all the beetles in the house, they say, will be attracted to it, and taken in vinegar and water, it is good for the stings of scorpions more particularly. It is stated also that if a person is rubbed with 3 leaves of it steeped in oil, it will have the effect of keeping all serpents at a distance. Chapter 64. Soft cunila, 3 remedies. Lebanotis, 3 remedies. The variety, on the other hand, known as soft cunila, has a more velvety leaf and branches covered with thorns. When rubbed, it has just the smell of honey, and it adheres to the fingers when touched. There is another kind again known to us as Lebanotis, a name which it owes to the resemblance of its smell to that of frankincense. Both of these plants, taken in wine or vinegar, are antidotes for the stings of serpents. Beaten up in water also, and sprinkled about a place, they kill fleas. Chapter 65. Cultivated cunila, 3 remedies. Mountain cunila, 7 remedies. Cultivated cunila has also its medicinal uses. The juice of it, in combination with rose oil, is good for the ears, and the plant itself is taken in drink to counteract the effects of violent blows. A variety of this plant is the mountain cunila, similar to wild thyme in appearance, and particularly efficacious for the stings of serpents. This plant is diuretic and promotes the lochial discharge. It aids the digestion too in a marvellous degree. Both varieties have a tendency to sharpen the appetite, even when persons are troubled with indigestion, if taken fasting in drink. They are good too for sprains, and taken with barley meal and vinegar and water, they are extremely useful for stings inflicted by wasps and insects of a similar nature. We shall have occasion to speak of other varieties of Lebanotis in their appropriate places. Chapter 66. Piperitis or siliquostrum, 5 remedies. Piperitis, which we have already mentioned as being called siliquostrum, is taken in drink for epilepsy. Castor used to give a description of it to the following effect. The stalk of it is long and red, with the knots lying close together. The leaves are similar to those of the laurel, and the seed is white and slender, like pepper in taste. He described it also as being beneficial to the gums and teeth, imparting sweetness to the breath, and dispelling flatulency. Chapter 67. Origanum, onitis, or prasion, 6 remedies. Origanum, which, as we have already stated, rivals cunila in flavour, includes many varieties employed in medicine. Onitis or prasion is the name given to one of these, which is not unlike hyssop in appearance. It is employed more particularly with warm water, for gnawing pains at the stomach, and for indigestion. Taken in white wine, it is good for the stings of spiders and scorpions, and, applied with vinegar and oil, in wool, it is a cure for sprains and bruises. Chapter 68. Tragoriganum, 9 remedies. Tragoriganum bears a strong resemblance to wild thyme. It is diuretic, disperses tumours, and taken in drink is extremely efficacious in cases of poisoning by mistletoe and stings by serpents. It is very good for acid eructations from the stomach and for the thoracic organs. It is given also for a cough with honey, as well as for pleurisy and peripneumony. Chapter 69. 3 varieties of Heracleotic origanum, 30 remedies. Heracleum, again, comprehends three varieties. The first, which is the darkest, has broader leaves than the others, and is of a glutinous nature. The second, which has leaves of a more slender form, and not unlike sampsucum in appearance, is by some persons called prasiyon in preference. The third is of an intermediate nature between the other two, but is less efficacious for medicinal purposes than either. But the best kind of all is that of Crete, for it has a particularly agreeable smell, the next best being that from Smyrna, which has even a more powerful odour than the last. The Heracleotic origanum, however, known by the name of onitis, is the one that is the most esteemed for taking in drink. Origanum in general is employed for repelling serpents, and it is given boiled to persons suffering from wounds. Taken in drink, it is a diuretic, and mixed with the root of panax, it is given for the cure of ruptures and convulsions. In combination with figs or hyssop, it is prescribed for dropsical patients in doses of 1 acetabulum, being reduced by boiling to 1/6. It is good also for the itch, prurigo, and leprosy, taken just before the bath. The juice of it is injected into the ears with milk. It being a cure also for affections of the tonsils and the uvula, and for ulcers of the head. A decoction of it taken with the ashes in wine neutralizes poison by opium or gypsum. Taken in doses of 1 acetabulum, it relaxes the bowels. It is applied as a liniment for bruises and for toothache, and mixed with honey and nitre, it imparts whiteness to the teeth. It has the effect also of stopping bleeding at the nose. A decoction of this plant with barley meal is employed for imposthumes of the parotid glands, and beaten up with nut galls and honey, it is used for roughness of the trachea. The leaves of it, with honey and salt, are good too for the spleen. Boiled with vinegar and salt, and taken in small doses, it attenuates the phlegm when very thick and black, and beaten up with oil, it is injected into the nostrils for jaundice. When persons are affected with lassitude, the body is well rubbed with it, care being taken not to touch the abdomen. Used with pitch, it is a cure for epinitis, and applied with a roasted fig, it brings boils to a head. Employed with oil and vinegar and barley meal, it is good for scrofulous swellings, and applied topically in a fig, it is a cure for pains in the sides. Beaten up and applied with vinegar, it is employed as a liniment for bloody fluxes of the generative organs, and it accelerates the lochial discharge after childbirth. Chapter 70. Dithander. 3 remedies. Dithander is generally considered to rank among the caustic plants. It is owing to this property that it clears the skin of the face, not however without excoriating it, though at the same time the excoriations are easily healed by employing wax and rose oil. It is owing to this property too that it always removes without difficulty leprous sores and itch scabs, as well as the scars left by ulcers. It is said that in the case of toothache, if this plant is attached to the arm or the suffering side, it will have the effect of drawing the pain to it. Chapter 71. Gith or Melanthion. 23 remedies. Gith is by some Greek writers called Melanthion, and by others called melaspermin. That is looked upon as the best which has the most pungent odour and is the darkest in appearance. It is employed as a remedy for wounds made by serpents and scorpions. I find that for this purpose it is applied topically with vinegar and honey, and that by burning it serpents are kept at a distance. It is taken also in doses of 1 drachma for the bites of spiders. Beaten up and smelt at in a piece of linen cloth, it is a cure for running at the nostrils, and applied as a liniment with vinegar and injected into the nostrils, it dispels headache. With oil of iris it is good for defluxions and tumours of the eyes, and a decoction of it with vinegar is a cure for toothache. Beaten up and applied topically, or else chewed, it is used for ulcers of the mouth, and combined with vinegar, it is good for leprous sores and freckles on the skin. Taken in drink with the addition of nitre, it is good for hardness of breathing, and employed as a liniment for indurations, tumors of long standing, and suppurations. Taken several days in succession, it augments the milk in women who are nursing. The juice of this plant is collected in the same manner as that of henbane, and like it, if taken in too large doses, it acts as a poison, a surprising fact, seeing that the seed is held in esteem as a most agreeable seasoning for bread. The seed cleanses the eyes also, acts as a diuretic, and promotes the menstrual discharge. And not only this, but I find it stated also that if 30 grains only are attached to the body in a linen cloth, it will have the effect of accelerating the afterbirth. It is stated also that beaten up in urine, it is a cure for corns on the feet, and that when burnt it kills gnats and flies with the smell. Chapter 72. Anise. 61 Remedies. Anise too, one of the comparatively small number of plants that have been commended by Pythagoras, is taken in wine, either raw or boiled, for the stings of scorpions. Both green and dried, it is held in high repute, as an ingredient in all seasonings and sauces, and we find it placed beneath the undercrust of bread. Put with bitter almonds into the cloth strainers for filtering wine, it imparts an agreeable flavour to the wine. It has the effect also of sweetening the breath and removing all bad odours from the mouth, if chewed in the morning with smyrnion and a little honey, the mouth being then rinsed with wine. This plant imparts a youthful look to the features, and if suspended to the pillow, so as to be smelt by a person when asleep, it will prevent all disagreeable dreams. It has the effect of promoting the appetite also, for this too has been made by luxury one of the objects of art, ever since labour has ceased to stimulate it. It is for these various reasons that it has received the name of anisetum, given to it by some. Chapter 73. Where the best anise is found, various remedies derived from this plant. The most esteemed anise is that of Crete, and next to it that of Egypt. This plant is employed in seasonings to supply the place of lovage, and the perfume of it when burnt and inhaled alleviates headache. Avenor prescribes an application of the root, pounded, for defluxions of the eyes, and Aeolus employs it in a similar manner, in combination with saffron and wine, or else beaten up by itself and mixed with polenta, for violent defluxions, and the extraction of such objects as have got into the eyes. Applied too as a liniment in water, it arrests cancer of the nose. Mixed with hyssop and oxymel, and employed as a gargle, it is a cure for quinsy, and in combination with rose oil, it is used as an injection for the ears. Parched anise purges off phlegm from the chest, and if taken with honey, it is better still. For a cough, beat up 50 bitter almonds shelled in honey, with 1 acetabulum of anise. Another very easy remedy, too, is to mix 3 drachmae of anise with 2 of poppies and some honey, a piece the size of a bean being taken 3 times a day. Its main excellence, however, is as a carminative. Hence it is that it is so good for flatulency of the stomach, griping pains of the intestines, and celiac affections. A decoction of it smelt at and drunk arrests hiccup, and a decoction of the leaves removes indigestion. A decoction of it with parsley, if applied to the nostrils, will arrest sneezing. Taken in drink, anise promotes sleep, disperses calculi of the bladder, arrests vomiting and swelling of the viscera, and acts as an excellent pectoral for affections of the chest and of the diaphragm where the body is tightly laced. It is beneficial also to pour a decoction of it in oil upon the head for headache. It is generally thought that there is nothing in existence more beneficial to the abdomen and intestines than anise, for which reason it is given parched for dysentery and tenesmus. Some persons add opium to these ingredients, and prescribe 3 pills a day, the size of a bean, with 1 cyathus of wine. Diuches has employed the juice of this plant for lumbago, and prescribes the seed of it, pounded with mint, for dropsy and celiac affections. Avenor recommends the root also for affections of the kidneys. Dallion, the herbalist, employed it with parsley as a cataplasm for women in labour, as also for pains of the uterus, and for women in labour he prescribes a decoction of anise and dill to be taken in drink. It is used as a liniment also in cases of phrenitis, or else applied fresh gathered and mixed with polenta, in which form it is used also for infants attacked with epilepsy or convulsions. Pythagoras, indeed, assures us that persons, so long as they hold this plant in the hand, will never be attacked with epilepsy, for which reason as much of it as possible should be planted near the house. He says, too, that women who inhale the odour of it have a more easy delivery, it being his advice also that immediately after they are delivered it should be given them to drink with a sprinkling of polenta. Socimenes employed this plant in combination with vinegar for all kinds of indurations, and for lassitude he prescribes a decoction of it in oil with the addition of nitre. The same writer pledges his word to all wayfarers, that if they take aniseed in their drink, they will be comparatively exempt from fatigue on their journey. Heraclides prescribes a pinch of aniseed with 3 fingers for inflations of the stomach, to be taken with 2 oboli of castoreum in honeyed wine, and he recommends a similar preparation for inflations of the abdomen and intestines. In cases of orthopnea, he recommends a pinch of aniseed with 3 fingers and the same quantity of henbane to be mixed in ass's milk. It is the advice of many to those who are liable to vomit to take at dinner 1 acetabulum of aniseed and 10 laurel leaves, the whole to be beaten up and drunk in water. Anise chewed and applied warm, or else taken with castoreum in ocimum, allays suffocations of the uterus. It also dispels vertigo after childbirth, taken with a pinch of cucumber seed in 3 fingers and the same quantity of linseed in 3 hyathi of white wine. Tlepolemus has employed a pinch of aniseed and fennel in 3 fingers mixed with vinegar and 1 hyathis of honey for the cure of quartan fever. Applied topically with bitter almonds, aniseed is beneficial for maladies of the joints. There are some persons who look upon it as by nature an antidote to the venoms of the asp. It is a diuretic, assuages thirst, and acts as an aphrodisiac. Taken in wine, it promotes a gentle perspiration, and it has the property of protecting cloth from the ravages of moths. The more recently it has been gathered, and the darker its colour, the greater are its virtues. Still, however, it is injurious to the stomach, except when suffering from flatulency. End of section 37. Read for you by Chiquito Crasto, Birmingham, Alabama. Section 38 of the Natural History, Volume 4. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Read for you by Chiquito Crasto. The Natural History, Volume 4 by Pliny the Elder. Translated by John Bostock and Henry Thomas Riley. Chapter 74. Dill, 9 Remedies. Dill acts also as a carminative, allays gripings of the stomach, and arrests looseness of the bowels. The roots of this plant are applied topically in water, or else in wine for defluxions of the eyes. The seed of it, if smelt at while boiling, will arrest hiccup, and taken in water it dispels indigestion. The ashes of it are a remedy for swellings of the uvula, but the plant itself weakens the eyesight and generative powers. Chapter 75. Sarcopenium or Sagapenon, 13 Remedies. The Sarcopenium which grows in Italy is totally different from that which comes from beyond sea. This last, in fact, is similar to gum ammoniac and is known as Sagapenon. Sarcopenium is good for pain of the sides and chest, for convulsions, coughs of long standing, expectorations, and swellings of the thoracic organs. It is a cure also for vertigo, palsy, opisthotomy, affections of the spleen and loins, and for shivering fits. For suffocations of the uterus, this plant is given in vinegar to smell at, in addition to which it is sometimes administered in drink, or employed as a friction with oil. It is a good antidote also for medicaments of a noxious nature. Chapter 76. The white poppy, 3 remedies. The black poppy, 8 remedies. Remarks on sleep, opium. Remarks in disfavor of the potions known as anodynes, febrifuges, digestives, and celiacs. In what way the juices of these plants are to be collected. We have already stated that there are 3 varieties of the cultivated poppy, and on the same occasion we promised to describe the wild kinds. With reference to the cultivated varieties, the calyx of the white poppy is pounded and is taken in wine as a soporific. The seed of it is a cure also for elephantiasis. The black poppy acts as a soporific by the juice which exudes from incisions made in the stalk at the time when the plant is beginning to flower. Dioscorus says, "But when the blossom has gone off, according to Aeolus, this is done at the 3rd hour in a clear still day, or, in other words, when the dew has thoroughly dried upon the poppy. It is recommended to make the incision just beneath the head and calyx of the plant, this being the only kind, in fact, into the head of which the incision is made. This juice, like that of any other plant, is received in wool, or else, if it is in very minute quantities, it is scraped off with a thumb nail, just as it is from the lettuce, and so again on the following day, with the portion that has since dried there. If obtained from the poppy in sufficiently large quantities, this juice thickens, after which it is kneaded out into lozenges and dried in the shade. This juice is possessed not only of certain soporific qualities, but if taken in too large quantities, is productive of sleep unto death even. The name given to it is opium. It was in this way we learn that the father of P. Licinius Caecina, a man of praetorian rank, put an end to his life at Babylum in Spain, an incurable malady having rendered existence quite intolerable to him. Many other persons too have ended their lives in a similar way. It is for this reason that opium has been so strongly exclaimed against by Dioscorus and Erasistratus, for they altogether condemned it as a deadly poison, forbidding it to be used for infusions, even as being injurious to the sight. Andreas says, in addition to this, that the only reason why it does not cause instantaneous blindness is the fact that they adulterate it at Alexandria. In later times, however, the use of it has not been disapproved of. Witness the celebrated preparation known as diacodion. Lozenges are also made of ground poppy seed, which are taken in milk as a soporific. The seed is employed, too, with rose oil for headache, and in combination with that oil is injected into the ears for earache. Mixed with woman's milk, this seed is used as a liniment for gout. The leaves, too, are employed in a similar manner. Taken in vinegar, the seed is prescribed as a cure for erysipelas and wounds. For my own part, however, I do not approve of opium entering into the composition of eye salves, and still less of the preparations from it known as febrifuges, digestives, and celiacs. The black poppy, however, is very generally prescribed in wine for celiac affections. All the cultivated poppies are larger than the others, and the form of the head is round. In the wild poppy, the head is elongated and small, but it is possessed of more active properties than the others in every respect. This head is often boiled, and the decoction of it taken to promote sleep, the face being fomented also with the water. The best poppies are grown in dry localities, and where it seldom rains. When the heads and leaves of the poppy are boiled together, the name given to the decoction is meconium. It is much less powerful, however, in its effects than opium. The principal test of the purity of opium is the smell, which, when genuine, is so penetrating as to be quite insupportable. The next best test is that obtained by lighting it at a lamp, upon which it ought to burn with a clear, brilliant flame, and to give out a strong odour when extinguished, a thing that never happens when opium has been drugged, for in such case it lights with the greatest difficulty, and the flame repeatedly goes out. There is another way of testing its genuineness by water, for if it is pure, it will float like a thin cloud upon the surface, but if adulterated, it will unite in the form of blisters on the water. But the most surprising thing of all is the fact that the sun's heat in summer furnishes a test, for if the drug is pure, it will sweat and gradually melt till it has all the appearance of the juice when fresh gathered. Menesides is of opinion that the best way of preserving opium is to mix henbane seed with it. Others again recommend that it should be kept with beans. Chapter 77. The poppy called Rheus. 2 remedies. The poppy which we have spoken of under the names of Rheus and the erratic poppy forms an intermediate variety between the cultivated and the wild poppy, for it grows in the fields, it is true, but it is self-set nevertheless. Some persons eat it, calyx and all, immediately after it is gathered. This plant is an extremely powerful purgative. 5 heads of it, boiled in 3 semi-sextari of wine and taken in drink, have the effect of producing sleep. Chapter 78. The wild poppy called Ceratitis glaucum or paralium. 6 remedies. There is one variety of wild poppy known as Ceratitis. It is of a black colour, a cubit in height, and has a thick root covered with bark, with a head resembling a small bud, bent and pointed at the end like a horn. The leaves of this plant are smaller and thinner than those of the other wild poppies, and the seed, which is very diminutive, is ripe at harvest. Taken with honeyed wine, in doses of half an acetabulum, the seed acts as a purgative. The leaves, beaten up in oil, are a cure for the white specks which form on the eyes of beasts of burden. The root, boiled down to 1/2 in doses of 1 acetabulum to 2 sextari of water, is prescribed for maladies of the loins and liver, and the leaves, employed with honey, are a cure for carbuncles. Some persons give this kind of poppy the name of Glaucian, and others of Paralium, for it grows in fact in spots exposed to exhalations from the sea, or else in soils of a nitrous nature. Chapter 79. The wild poppy called Heracleum or Aphron. 4 remedies. Diocodion. There is another kind of wild poppy known as Heracleon by some persons and as Aphron by others. The leaves of it, when seen from a distance, have all the appearance of sparrows. The root lies on the surface of the ground, and the seed has exactly the colour of foam. This plant is used for the purpose of bleaching linen cloths in summer. It is bruised in a mortar for epilepsy, being given in white wine, in doses of 1 acetabulum, and acting as an emetic. This plant is extremely useful, also, for the composition of the medicament known as diocodion and arteriaceae. This preparation is made with 120 heads of this or any other kind of wild poppy, steeped for 2 days in 3 sextari of rain water, after which they are boiled in it. You must then dry the heads, which done, boil them down with honey to 1/2 at a slow heat. More recently, there have been added to the mixture 6 drachmae of saffron, hypocystis, frankincense, and gum acacia, with 1 sextarius of raisin wine of Crete. All this, however, is only so much ostentation, for the virtue of this simple and ancient preparation depends solely upon the poppy and the honey. Chapter 80. The poppy called Thythymalon or Paralion. 3 remedies. There is a third kind again called Thythymalon. Some persons give it the name of Mecon, others of Paralion. It has a white leaf resembling that of flax, and a head the size of a bean. It is gathered when the vine is in blossom and dried in the shade. The seed, taken in drink, purges the bowels, the dose being half an acetabulum in honeyed wine. The head of every species of poppy, whether green or dry, used as a fomentation, assuages defluxions of the eyes. Opium, if taken in pure wine immediately after the sting of a scorpion, prevents any dangerous results. Some persons, however, attribute this virtue to the black poppy only, the head or leaves being beaten up for the purpose. Chapter 81. Thistle or purslain, otherwise called peplus. 25 remedies. There is a wild purslain too called peplus, not much superior in its virtues to the cultivated kind, of which such remarkable properties are mentioned. It neutralizes the effects, it is said, of poisoned arrows, and the venom of the serpents known as hemorrhoids and prester. Taken with the food and applied to the wound, it extracts the poison. The juice too, they say, taken in raisin wine, is an antidote for henbane. When the plant itself cannot be procured, the seed of it is found to be equally efficacious. It is a corrective also of impurities in water, and beaten up in wine and applied topically, it is a cure for headaches and ulcers of the head. Chewed in combination with honey, it is a curative of the other kinds of sores. It is similarly applied to the region of the brain in infants, and in cases of umbilical hernia, as also for defluxions of the eyes, in persons of all ages, being applied to the forehead and temples with polenta. If employed as a liniment for the eyes, milk and honey are added, and when used for proptosis of the eyes, the leaves are beaten up with bean shells. In combination with polenta, salt, and vinegar, it is employed as a fomentation for blisters. Chewed raw, purslain reduces ulcerations of the mouth and gum boils, and cures toothache. A decoction of it is good too for ulcers of the tonsils. Some persons have added a little myrrh to it when so employed. Chewed, it strengthens such teeth as may happen to be loose, dispels crudities, imparts additional strength to the voice, and allays thirst. Used with nutgalls, linseed, and honey in equal proportions, it assuages pains in the neck, and combined with honey or simoleon chalk, it is good for disease of the mammae. The seed of it, taken with honey, is beneficial for asthma. Eaten in salads, this plant is very strengthening to the stomach. In burning fevers, applications of it are made with polenta. In addition to which, if chewed, it will cool and refresh the intestines. It arrests vomiting also, and for dysentery and abscesses, it is eaten with vinegar, or else taken with cummin in drink. Boiled, it is good for tenesmus. Taken either in the food or drink, it is good for epilepsy, and taken in doses of 1 acetabulum in boiled wine, it promotes the menstrual discharge. Employed also as a liniment with salt, it is used as a remedy for fits of hot gout and erysipelas. The juice of this plant, taken in drink, strengthens the kidneys and bladder, and expels intestinal worms. In conjunction with oil, it is applied with polenta to assuage the pain of wounds, and it softens indurations of the sinews. Metrodorus, who wrote an abridgment of botany, says that it should be given after delivery to accelerate the lochial discharge. It is also an antiphrodisiac, and prevents the recurrence of lascivious dreams. One of the principal personages of Spain, whose son had been praetor, is in the habit of carrying the root of it, to my knowledge, suspended by a string from his neck, except when he is taking the bath, for an incurable affection of the uvula, a precaution by which he has been spared all inconvenience. I have found it stated too in some authors, that if the head is rubbed with liniment of this plant, there will be no defluxions perceptible the whole year through. It is generally thought, however, that purslain weakens the sight. Chapter 82. Coriander. 21 remedies. There is no wild coriander to be found. The best, it is generally agreed, is that of Egypt. Taken in drink and applied to the wound, It is a remedy for the sting of one kind of serpent, known as the amphisbaena. Pounded, it is healing also for other wounds, as well as for epinitis and blisters. Employed in the same state with honey or raisins, it disperses all tumours and gatherings, and, beaten up in vinegar, it removes abscesses of an inflammatory nature. Some persons recommend 3 grains of it to be taken for tertian fevers, just before the fit comes on, or else in larger quantities to be bruised and applied to the forehead. There are others again who think that it is attended with excellent results to put coriander under the pillow before sunrise. While green, it is possessed of very cooling and refreshing properties. Combined with honey or raisins, it is an excellent remedy for spreading ulcers, as also for disease of the testes, burns, carbuncles, and maladies of the ears. Applied with woman's milk, it is good for defluxions of the eyes, and for fluxes of the belly and intestines. The seed is taken with water in drink. It is also taken in drink for cholera with rue. Coriander seed, used as a potion with pomegranate juice and oil, expels worms in the intestines. Xenocrates states a very marvellous fact, if true. He says that if a woman takes 1 grain of this seed, the menstrual discharge will be retarded 1 day, if 2 grains, 2 days, and so on according to the number of grains taken. Marcus Varro is of opinion that if coriander is lightly pounded and sprinkled over it with cummin and vinegar, all kinds of meat may be kept in summer without spoiling. Chapter 83. Orage. 14 remedies. Orage again is found both wild and cultivated. Pythagoras has accused this plant of producing dropsy, jaundice, and paleness of the complexion, and he says that it is extremely difficult of digestion. He asserts also to its disparagement that everything that grows near it in the garden is sure to be drooping and languid. Diocles and Dionysius have added a statement that it gives birth to numerous diseases, and that it should never be boiled without changing the water repeatedly. They say too that it is prejudicial to the stomach, and that it is productive of freckles and pimples on the skin. I am at a loss to imagine why Solo of Smyrna has stated that this plant is cultivated in Italy with the greatest difficulty. Hippocrates prescribes it with beet as a pessary for affections of the uterus, and Laius of Neapolis recommends it to be taken in drink in cases of poisoning by cantharides. He is of opinion also that either raw or boiled, it may be advantageously employed as a liniment for inflammatory swellings, incipient boils, and all kinds of indurations, and that, mixed with oxymel and nitre, it is good for erysipelas and gout. This plant, it is said, will bring away malformed nails without producing sores. There are some persons who give orage seed with honey for jaundice, and rub the throat and tonsils with it, nitre being added as well. They employ it also to purge the bowels, and use the seed boiled as an emetic, either taken by itself or in conjunction with mallows or lentils. Wild orage is used for dyeing the hair, as well as the other purposes above enumerated. Chapter 84. The mallow called malapi. 13 remedies. The mallow called malachy. 1 remedy. The mallow called althlea or plistolochia. 59 remedies. Both kinds of mallows, on the other hand, the cultivated and the wild, are held in very general esteem. These kinds are subdivided, each of them into 2 varieties, according to the size of the leaf. The cultivated mallow with large leaves is known to the Greeks by the name of malapi, the other being called malachy. From the circumstance, it is generally thought that it relaxes the bowels. The wild mallow, again with large leaves and white roots, is called althlea, and by some persons, on account of its salutary properties, plistolochia. Every soil in which mallows are sown is rendered all the richer thereby. This plant is possessed of remarkable virtues, as a cure for all kinds of stings, those of scorpions, wasps, and similar insects, as well as the bite of the shrew mouse, more particularly. Nay, what is even more than this, if a person has been rubbed with oil, in which any one of the mallows has been beaten up, or even if he carries them on his persons, he will never be stung. A leaf of mallow put upon a scorpion will strike it with torpor. The mallow is an antidote also against the poisonous effects of white lead, and applied raw with saltpetre, it extracts all kinds of pointed bodies from the flesh. A decoction of it with the root taken in drink neutralizes the poison of the sea hare, provided, as some say, it is brought off the stomach by vomiting. Other marvels are also related in connection with the mallow, but the most surprising thing of all is that if a person takes half a cyathus of the juice of any one of them daily, he will be exempt from all diseases. Left to putrefy in wine, mallows are remedial for running sores of the head, and mixed with honey for lichens and ulcerations of the mouth. A decoction of the root, too, is a remedy for dandruff of the head and looseness of the teeth. With the root of the mallow, which has a single stem, it is a good plan to prick the parts about a root when it aches until the pain has ceased. With the addition of human saliva, the mallow cleanses scrofulous sores, imposthumes of the parotid glands, and inflammatory tumours, without producing a wound. The seed of it, taken in red wine, disperses phlegm and relieves nausea, and the root, attached to the person with black wool, is a remedy for affections of the mammae. Boiled in milk and taken as a pottage, it cures a cough within 5 days. Sextius Niger says that mallows are prejudicial to the stomach, and Olympias, the Theban authoress, asserts that employed with goose grease they are productive of abortion. Some persons are of opinion that a good handful of the leaves taken in oil and wine promotes the menstrual discharge. At all events, it is a well-known fact that if the leaves are strewed beneath a woman in labour, the delivery will be accelerated, but they must be taken away immediately after birth, or prolapsus of the uterus will be the consequence. Mallow juice also is given to women in labour, a decoction of it being taken fasting in wine in doses of 1 hemina. Mallow seed is attached to the arms of patients suffering from spermatoria, and so naturally adapted is this plant for the promotion of lustfulness that the seed of the kind with a single stem sprinkled upon the genitals will increase the sexual desire in males to an infinite degree, according to Xenocrates, who says, too, that if 3 roots are attached to the person in the vicinity of those parts, they will be productive of a similar result. The same writer informs us also that injections of mallows are good for tenesmus and dysentery, and for maladies of the rectum even, if used as a fomentation only. The juice is given warm to patients afflicted with melancholy, in doses of 3 cyathi, and to insane persons in doses of 4. 1 hemina of the decoction is prescribed also for epilepsy. A warm decoction of the juice is employed too as a fomentation for calculus, flatulency, gripings of the stomach, and opisthophony. The leaves are boiled and applied with oil as a poultice for erysipelas and burns, and raw with bread to arrest inflammation in wounds. A decoction of mallows is beneficial for affections of the sinews and bladder, and for gnawing pains of the intestines. Taken too as an aliment or an injection, they are relaxing to the uterus, and the decoction taken with oil facilitates the passage of the urine. The root of the althaea is even more efficacious for all the purposes above enumerated, and for convulsions and ruptures more particularly. Boiled in water, it arrests looseness of the bowels, and taken in white wine, it is a cure for scrofulous sores, imposthumes of the parotid glands, and inflammations of the mammae. A decoction of the leaves in wine, applied as a liniment, disperses inflammatory tumours, and the leaves, first dried and then boiled in milk, are a speedy cure for a cough, however inveterate. Hippocrates prescribes a decoction of the root to be drunk by persons wounded or thirsty from loss of blood, and the plant itself as an application to wounds with honey and resin. He also recommends it to be employed in a similar manner for contusions, sprains, and tumours of the muscles, sinews, and joints, and prescribes it to be taken in wine for asthma and dysentery. It is a singular thing that water in which this root has been put thickens when exposed in the open air and congeals like ice. The more recently, however, it has been taken up, the greater are the virtues of the root. Chapter 85. Wild lapathum or oxalis, otherwise called lapathum, cantharium or rumex, 1 remedy. Hydrolapathum, 2 remedies. Hippolapathum, 6 remedies. Oxylapathum, 4 remedies. Lapathum too has pretty nearly the same properties. There is a wild variety known to some as oxalis, very similar in taste to the cultivated kind, with pointed leaves, a colour like that of white beet, and an extremely diminutive root. Our people call it rumex, while others again give it the name of Lapathum cantharium. Mixed with axle grease, this plant is very efficacious for scrofulous sores. There is another kind, again hardly forming a distinct variety, known as oxylapathon, which resembles the cultivated kind even more than the last, though the leaves are more pointed and redder. It grows only in marshy spots. Some authors are found who speak of a hydrolapathon, which grows in the water, they say. There is also another variety known as hippolapathon, larger than the cultivated kind, whiter and more compact. The wild varieties of the lapathon are a cure for the stings of scorpions, and protect those who carry the plant on their person from being stung. A decoction of the root in vinegar employed as a gargle is beneficial to the teeth, and if drunk is a cure for jaundice. The seed is curative of the most obstinate maladies of the stomach. The root of hippolapathum, in particular, has the property of bringing off malformed nails, and the seed taken in wine in doses of 2 drachmae is a cure for dysentery. The seed of oxylapathum, washed in rainwater, with the addition of a piece of gum acacia, about the size of a lentil, is good for patients troubled with spitting of blood. Most excellent lozenges are made of the leaves and root of this plant, with the addition of nitre and a little incense. When wanted for use, they are first steeped in vinegar. Chapter 86. Cultivated lapathum, 21 remedies. Bula lapathum, 1 remedy. As to garden lapathum, it is good in liniments on the forehead for defluxions of the eyes. The root of it cures lichens and leprous sores, and a decoction of it in wine is remedial for scrofulous swellings, imposthumes of the parotid glands and calculus of the bladder. Taken in wine, it is a cure for affections of the spleen, and employed as a fomentation, it is equally good for celiac affections, dysentery, and tenesmus. For all these purposes, the juice of lapathum is found to be even still more efficacious. It acts as a carminative and diuretic, and dispels films on the eyes. Put into the bath, or else rubbed upon the body without oil before taking the bath, it effectually removes all itching sensations. The root of it, chewed, strengthens the teeth, and a decoction of it in wine arrests looseness of the stomach. The leaves, on the other hand, relax it. Not to omit any particulars, Solo has added to the above varieties a bulapathon, which differs only from the others in the length of the root. This root, taken in wine, is very beneficial for dysentery. End of section 38. Read for you by Chiquito Crasto, Birmingham, Alabama.
Section 39 of the Natural History, Volume 4. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Michelle. The Natural History, Volume 4, by Pliny the Elder, translated by John Bostock and Henry Thomas Riley. Section 39. Chapter 87. Mustard. The 3 kinds of it. 44 remedies. Mustard, of which we have mentioned 3 different kinds when speaking of the garden herbs, is ranked by Pythagoras among the very first of those plants, the pungency of which mounts upwards. For there is none to be found more penetrating to the brain and nostrils. Pounded with vinegar, mustard is employed as a liniment for the stings of serpents and scorpions, and it effectually neutralizes the poisonous properties of the fungi. To cure an immoderate secretion of phlegm, it is kept in the mouth till it melts, or else it is mixed with hydromel and employed as a gargle. Mustard is chewed for toothache, and is taken as a gargle with ocimum for the afflictions of the uvula. It is very beneficial also for all maladies of the stomach. Taken with food, it facilitates expectoration from the lungs. It is given too for asthma and epileptic fits, in combination with cucumber seed. It has the effect of quickening the senses, and effectively clears the head by sneezing, relaxes the stomach, and promotes menstrual discharge and the urinary secretions. Beaten up with figs and cummin in proportion of 1/3 of each ingredient, it is used as an external application for dropsy. Mixed with vinegar, mustard resuscitates by its powerful odor persons who have swooned in fits of epilepsy or lethargy, as well as females suffering from hysterical suffocations. For the cure of lethargy, tortolon is added, that being the name given to the seed of heartwort, and if the lethargic sleep should happen to be very profound, an application of it with figs and vinegar is made to the legs, or to the head even. Used as an external application, mustard is a cure for inveterate pains of the chest, loins, hips, shoulders, and in general for all deep-seated pains in any part of the body, raising blisters by its caustic properties. In cases of extreme indurations of the skin, the mustard is applied to the part without figs, and a cloth is employed doubled where it is apprehended that it may burn too powerfully. It is used also, combined with red earth, for alopecia, itch scabs, leprosy, thurasis, tetanus, and opisthotomy. They employ it also as a liniment with honey for styes on the eyelids and films on the eyes. The juices of mustard are extracted in 3 different ways: in earthen vessels in which it has been left to dry gradually in the sun. From the thin stem of the plant there exudes also a milky juice, which, when thus hardened, is remedial for toothache. The seed and root, after they have been left to steep in must, are beaten up together in a mortar, and a good handful of the mixture is taken to strengthen the throat, stomach, eyes, head, and all the senses. This mixture is extremely good, too, for fits of lassitude in females, being one of the most wholesome medicines in existence. Taken in vinegar, mustard disperses calculi in the bladder, and in combination with honey and goose grease, or else cyprian wax, it is employed as a liniment for livid spots and bruises. From the seed, first steeped in olive oil, and then subjected to pressure, an oil is extracted which is employed for rigidity of the sinews, and chills and numbness in the loins and hips. Chapter 88. Adarka, 48 Remedies. It is said that adarka, of which we have already made mention when speaking of the forest trees, has a similar nature to that of mustard, and is productive of the same effects. It grows upon the outer coat of reeds below the head. Chapter 89. Marrubium or prasin, otherwise Nostrophium, Philiopes, or Philiocaris. 29 Remedies. Most medical writers have spoken in high terms of marrubium, or horehound, as a plant of the very greatest utility. Among the Greeks it is called prasin by some, by others linostrophon, and by others again Philopes, or Philiocaris. It is a plant too well known to require any description. The leaves and seed, beaten up together, are good for the stings of serpents, pains of the chest and side, and inveterate coughs. The branches, too, boiled in water with panic, so as to modify its acridity, are remarkably useful for persons troubled with spitting of blood. Horehound is applied also with grease to scrofulous swellings. Some persons recommend for a cough a pinch of the fresh seed with 2 fingers, boiled with a handful of spelt, and a little oil and salt, the mixture to be taken fasting. Others again regard as quite incomparable, for a similar purpose, an extract of the juices of horehound and fennel. Taking 3 sextari of the extract, they boil it down to 2, Then add 1/6 of honey, after which they again boil it down to 2, and administer 1 spoonful of the preparation daily in 1 cyathus of water. Beaten up with honey, horehound is particularly beneficial for the afflictions of the male organs. Employed with vinegar, it cleanses lichens and is very salutary for ruptures, convulsions, spasms, and contractions of the sinews. Taken in drink with salt and vinegar, it relaxes the bowels, promotes the menstrual discharge, and accelerates the afterbirth. Dried, powdered, and taken with honey, it is extremely efficacious for a dry cough, as also for gangrenes and hangnails. The juice, too, taken with honey, is good for the ears and nostrils. It is a remedy also for jaundice and diminishes the bilious secretions. Among the few antidotes for poisons, it is one of the very best known. The plant itself, taken with iris and honey, purges the stomach and promotes expectorations. It acts also as a strong diuretic, though at the same time care must be taken not to use it when the bladder is ulcerated and the kidneys are affected. It is said, too, that the juice of horehound improves the eyesight. Castor speaks of 2 varieties of it, the black horehound and the white, which last he considers to be the best. He puts the juice of it into an empty eggshell, and then mixes the egg with it, together with honey in equal proportions. This preparation, used warm, he says, will bring abscesses to a head, and cleanse and heal them. Beaten up, too, with stale axle grease and applied topically, he says horehound is a cure for the bite of a dog. Chapter 90. Wild Thyme. 18 Remedies. Wild thyme, it is said, borrows its name, serpyllum, from the fact that it is a creeping plant, a property peculiar to the wild kind, that which grows in rocky places more particularly. The cultivated thyme is not a creeping plant, but grows upwards as much as a palm in height. That which springs up spontaneously grows the most luxuriantly, its leaves and branches being whiter than those of the other kinds. Thyme is efficacious as a remedy for the stings of serpents and the cenchrus more particularly, also for the sting of the scolopendra, both sea and land, the leaves and branches being boiled for the purpose in wine. Burnt, it puts to flight all venomous creatures by its smell, and it is particularly beneficial as an antidote to the venom of marine animals. A decoction of it in vinegar is applied for headache, with rose oil, to the temples and forehead, also for phrenitis and lethargy. It is given, too, in doses of 4 drachmae for grippings of the stomach, strangury, quinsy, and fits of vomiting. It is taken in water also for liver complaints. The leaves, given in doses of 4 oboli in vinegar for diseases of the spleen. Beaten up in 2 cyathae of ocimum, it is used for spitting of blood. Chapter 91. Cimbrium or Thybreum. 23 Remedies. Wild cimbrium, by some persons called Thybreum, does not grow beyond a foot in height. The kind which grows in watery places is similar to nasturtium, and they are both of them efficacious for the stings of certain insects, such as hornets and the like. That which grows in dry locations is odoriferous, and is employed for wreaths. The leaf of it is narrower than the other kind. They both of them alleviate headache and defluxions of the eyes, Philinis says. Some persons, however, employ bread in addition, while others again use a decoction of the plant by itself in wine. It is a cure also for epinychus, and removes spots on the face in females by the end of 4 days, for which purpose it is applied at night and taken off in the daytime. It arrests vomiting, hiccups, grippings, and fluxes of the stomach, whether taken with the food or the juice extracted and given in drink. This plant, however, should never be eaten by pregnant women, except in cases where the fetus is dead, for the very application of it is sufficient to produce abortion. Taken with wine, it is diuretic, and the wild variety expels calculi even. For persons necessitated to sit up awake, an infusion of it in vinegar is applied as a liniment to the head. Chapter 92. Linseed. 30 Remedies. Linseed is not only used in combination with other substances, but employed by itself. It disperses spots on the face in women, Its juice, too, is very beneficial to the sight. Combined with incense and water, or else with myrrh and wine, it is a cure for defluxions of the eyes, and employed with honey, grease, or wax, for imposthumes of the parotid glands. Prepared like polenta, it is good for fluxes of the stomach, and a decoction of it in water and oil applied topically with anise is prescribed for quinsy. It is sometimes used parched also to arrest looseness of the bowels, and applications of it are used in vinegar for coliac afflictions and dysentery. It is eaten with raisins also for pains in the liver, and excellent electuaries are made of it for the treatment of phthisis. Linseed meal, with the addition of niter, salt, or ashes, softens rigidities of the muscles, sinews, joints, and vertebrae, as well as the membranous tissues of the brain. Employed with figs, linseed meal ripens abscesses and brings them to a head. Mixed with the root of wild cucumber, it extracts all foreign bodies from the flesh, as well as splinters of broken bones. A decoction of linseed meal and wine prevents ulcers from spreading, and mixed with honey it is remedial for pituitous eruptions. Used with nasturtium in equal quantities, it rectifies malformed nails. Mixed with resin and myrrh, it cures affections of the testes and hernia, and with water gangrenous sores. A decoction of linseed meal with fenugreek, in the proportion of 1/6 of each, and hydromel, is recommended for pains in the stomach, and employed as an injection with oil or honey, it is beneficial for dangerous affections of the chest and intestines. Chapter 93. Blite. 6 remedies. Blite seems to be a plant of an inert nature, without flavor or any pungency whatever. Hence it is that in Meander we find husbands giving this name to their wives by way of reproach. It is prejudicial to the stomach, and disturbs the bowels to such a degree as to cause cholera in some. It is stated, however, that taken in wine it is good for the stings of scorpions, and that it is sometimes used as a liniment for corns on the feet, and with oil for affections of the spleen and pains in the temples. Hippocrates is of the opinion that if taken with food it will arrest the menstrual discharge. Chapter 94. Meum and Meum anthelminticum. 7 remedies. Meum is never cultivated in Italy except by medical men, and by very few of those. There are 2 varieties of it, the finer kind being known as anthelminticum, because according to some it was first discovered by Athamas, or else because, as others think, that of the best quality is found upon Mount Athamas. The leaf is similar to that of dill, and the stem is sometimes as much as 2 cubits in length. The roots, which run obliquely, are numerous and mostly black. Though sometimes white, it is not of so red a hue as the other kind. The root of this plant, pounded or boiled and taken in water, is diuretic, and is marvelously efficacious for dispelling flatulency of the stomach. It is good too for grippings of the bowels and affections of the bladder. Applied with honey to the region of the uterus, it acts as a diuretic, and is used as a liniment with parsley upon the lower region of the abdomen in infants, and has a similar effect. Chapter 95. Fennel. 22 remedies. Fennel has been rendered famous by the serpent, which tastes it, as already stated, when it casts its old skin, and sharpens its sight with the juice of this plant, a fact which has led to the conclusion that this juice must be beneficial also in high degree to the human sight. Fennel juice is gathered when the stem is swelling with the bud, after which it is dried in the sun and applied as an ointment with honey. This plant is to be found in all parts of the world. The most esteemed preparation from it is that made in Iberia, from the tear-like drops which exude from the stalk and the seed fresh gathered. The juice is extracted also from incisions made in the root at the first germination of the plant. Chapter 96. Hippomerothron or Myrcenium. 5 remedies. There is also a wild variety of fennel, known by some persons as Hippomerothron, and by others as Myrcenium. It has a larger leaf and a more acrid taste than the other kind. It is taller also, about the thickness of a walking stick, and has a white root. It grows in warm but stony localities. Diocles speaks, too, of another variety of hippomaerathron, with a long, narrow leaf, and a seed like that of coriander. The seed of the cultivated fennel is medicinally employed in wine for the stings of scorpions and serpents, and the juice of it, injected into the ears, has the effect of destroying small worms that breed there. Fennel is employed as an ingredient in nearly all our seasonings, vinegar sauces more particularly. It is placed also beneath the undercrust of bread. The seed, in fevers even, acts as an astringent upon the relaxed stomach, and beaten up with water, it allays nausea. It is highly esteemed also for the affections of the lungs and liver. Taken in moderate quantities, it arrests looseness of the bowels, and acts as a diuretic. A decoction of it is good for gripings of the stomach, and taken in drink it restores the milk. The root, taken in a peason, purges the kidneys, an effect which is equally produced by decoction of the juice or of the seed. The root is good too, boiled in wine, for dropsy and convulsions. The leaves are applied to burning tumors. With vinegar expel calculi of the bladder, and act as an aphrodisiac. In whatever way it is taken in drink, fennel has the property of promoting the secretion of the seminal fluids. It is extremely beneficial to the generative organs. Whether decoction of the root in wine is employed as a fomentation, or whether it is used beaten up in oil, many persons apply fennel with wax to tumors and bruises, and employ the root with the juice of the plant, or else with honey, for the bites of dogs, and with wine for the stings of multipeds. Hippomaerathron is more efficacious in every respect than cultivated fennel. It expels calculi more particularly, and, taken with weak wine, is good for the bladder and irregularities of the menstrual discharge. In this plant the seed is more efficacious than the root, the dose of either of them being a pinch with 2 fingers, beaten up and mixed with the usual drink. Petricus, who wrote a work on serpents, and Mitron, who wrote a treatise on botany, are of opinion that there is nothing in existence of greater efficacy against serpents than hippomaerathron. Indeed, Nicander has ranked it by no means among the lowest of antidotes. Chapter 97. Hemp. 9 remedies. Hemp originally grew in the forests, where it is found with a blacker and rougher leaf than in the other kinds. Hemp seed, it is said, renders men impotent. The juice of this seed will extract worms from the ears, or any insect which may have entered them, though at the cost of producing headache. The virtues of hemp, it is said, are so great that an infusion of it in water will cause it to coagulate. Hence it is that if taken in water it will arrest looseness in beasts of burden. A decoction of the root in water relaxes contractions of the joints, and cures gout and similar maladies. It is applied raw to burns, but it must be frequently changed so as not to let it dry. Chapter 98. Fennel giant. 8 remedies. Fennel giant has a seed similar to that of dill. That which has a single stem bifurcated at the top is generally thought to be the female plant. The stalks of it are eaten boiled, and pickled in brine and honey. They are recommended as particularly beneficial to the stomach. If taken, however, in too large quantities, they are apt to produce headache. The root of it, in doses of 1 denarius to 2 seathi of wine, is used in drink for the stings of serpents, and the root itself is applied topically for the same purpose, as also for the cure of gripings of the stomach. Taken in oil and vinegar, it is used as a check for excessive perspirations and fevers even. The inspissated juice of fennel giant, taken in quantities the size of a bean, acts as a purgative, and the pith of it is good for the uterus, as well as for all the maladies previously mentioned. To arrest hemorrhage, 10 of the seeds are taken in drink, bruised in wine, or else with the pith of the plant. There are some persons who think that the seed should be administered for epilepsy from the 4th to the 7th day of the moon, in doses of 1 spoonful. Fennel giant is naturally so inimical to the murena, the very touch of it even will kill that fish. Castor was of opinion that the juice of the root is extremely beneficial to the sight. Chapter 99. The thistle or scolimos. 6 remedies. We have already spoken, when treating of the garden plants, of the cultivation of the thistle. We may as well therefore not delay to mention its medicinal properties. Of wild thistles there are two varieties, one of which throws out numerous stalks immediately it leaves the ground, the other being thicker and having but a single stem. They have both of them a few leaves only, and covered with prickles, the head of the plant being protected by thorny points. The last mentioned, however, puts forth in the middle of these points a purple blossom, which turns white with great rapidity, and is carried off by the wind. The Greeks give it the name of skolimos. This plant, gathered before it blossoms, and beaten up and subjected to pressure, produces a juice which, applied to the head, makes the hair grow again when it has fallen off through alloplacy. The root of either kind, boiled in water, creates thirst, it is said, in those who drink it. It strengthens the stomach also, and, if we are to believe what is said, has some influence upon the womb in promoting the conception of male offspring. At all events, Glaucius, who seems to have paid the most attention to the subject, has written to that effect. The thin juice, like mastich, which exudes from these plants, imparts sweetness to the breath. Chapter 100. The composition of theriaca. But as we are now about to leave the garden plants, we will take this opportunity of describing a very famous preparation, extracted from them as an antidote against the stings of all kinds of venomous animals. It is inscribed in verse upon the stone in the temple of Aesculapius at Kos. Take 2 denarii of wild thyme, and the same quantity of alpaponix and meum respectively, 1 denarius of trefoil seed, and of anise seed, fennel seed, ammi, and parsley, 6 denarii respectively, with 12 denarii of meal of fitches. Beat up these ingredients together and pass them through a sieve, after which they must be kneaded with the best wine that can be had, and then made into lozenges of 1 victoriatus each. One of these is to be given to the patient, steeped in 3 seae of wine. King Antiochus the Great, it is said, employed this theriaca against all kinds of venomous animals, the asps excepted. Summary. Remarkable facts, narratives, and observations 1506. Roman authors quoted: Cato the Censor, M. Varro, Pompeius Linnaeus, Sievalgius, Hyginus, Sextus Niger, who wrote in Greek, Julius Bassus, who wrote in Greek, Celsus, Antonius Castor. Foreign authors quoted: Democritus, Theophrastus, Orpheus, Leander, who wrote the Biocresta, Pythagoras, Nicander. Medical authors quoted: Chrysippus, Diocles, Ophelion, Heraclides, Icescus, Dionysius, Apollodorus of Citium, Apollodorus of Tarentum, Praxagoras, Philstonicus, Medius, Diuces, Cleophantus, Philistion, Asclepiades, Cratius, Petronius, Deodatus, Iolus, Erastoratus, Diagoras, Andreas, Nestides, Epicharmus, Damian, Dalian, Sosimenes, Tlepolemus, Metrodorus, Solo, Lycus, Olympius of Thebes, Philinus, Patricus, Micton, Glaucius, Xenocrates. End of section 39. End of the Natural History, Volume 4, by Pliny the Elder, translated by John Bostock and Henry Thomas Riley.